Hey guys, it's been an interesting week. Remember last week I was talking some about staying godly despite the circumstances. like, I got done with the broadcast. I just went and sat on the couch. I was hanging out with the dogs, and not 30 minutes later, I don't think, I got a call from Carrie saying that her car got broken into. And it was still kind of surreal at first. It didn't really settle in. And then I think just to keep that flow going, I ended up sending Bernard a text, just kind of trying to make fun of the whole thing. I was like, man, who is it that says we need to practice the things we preach and the things we read about in the Bible? And he's like, I've got a list of videos you might enjoy by a guy named Bagwell. And our insurance company was cool with this. They got Carrie a rental car because they ended up smashing in the front passenger side window looking for electronics in her book bag, thinking there might be a laptop in there. And the chumps ended up getting an iPod and a car charger. The iPod was like 8 years old, and it was well beyond its last leg anyway. But that whole thing, just, man, we ended up getting a bid for it, and when they started talking money, that was when reality set in, and I was ready to find those thieves and love them with an open palm repeatedly. When I sent Bernard that message, the last thing on my mind was praying for him and loving him and showing him mercy and grace and all the stuff that we're supposed to do. And that was just something, man. It was like that was the beginning of a gauntlet week. It was like that was the thing that got the ball rolling. And there was just stuff going on at work. It's like I just started finding more and more reasons just to get irritated. Because, there's stuff we were going to do with that money. And honestly, if you think I'm making a plea for money, man, you and I can have a chat after this. I promise I will set you straight by the time we're done talking. But, yeah, the biggest thing, man, is trying to find in my heart something that wanted to forgive those people, whoever they are. And that was just something that had been weighing on my mind all week. And, it's something I kept trying to bring up with God. I kept just taking it up with him, and he just kept asking me one thing over and over and over and over. I just asked him, I said, God, how come this had to happen, man? This sucks. Dude, they couldn't have gone one car over or something, huh? Screw up somebody else. Because that's the Christian way to look at it. And then he'd let me play out. I'd go catch a breath or something in our thoughts. And he'd be like, well, where's your hope? And I just kind of collect my thoughts and realize just how far off base I was being with my line of thinking. And then just kind of push God away for a while and just just go be angry for a while. And then I go back to God. Oh, God, this sucks, man. How come this had to happen to Carrie's car? Why couldn't they hit the car next to her? You know, I'm just replay the whole thing over and over for some reason, thinking I was going to get a different answer from God. And it's like it just kept coming to a head. He kept, you know, same thing. I'd play out in that rant, and it's real peaceful. He'd be like, well, where's your hope? And then I'd realize how far off base I was, and go push God away and find another reason to be angry, you know, whatever. And so, you know, that I don't know how many times a day that happened. But like I said, man, I hope you guys have absolutely no confusion on just how human I am. And I've talked before about how I like the underground, the guerrilla approach on religion and Christianity and God when I'm at work. You know, there's plenty of people that know I'm a Christian, but I don't shove it in their face, dude. I think it's a healthy challenge to actually live what you say you believe. And we had this new chick start a week or so ago, and I wasn't quite sure what to make of her because she had those weird Christian eyes, you know, like they're happy but they're dead inside, like she was raised in church. And so yeah, I wanted to give her a chance. And I got to talk to her a little bit. Her husband works at Oral Roberts University, and I haven't gotten a chance to work with her much. She was supposed to come into work one day and had to. She called out because her kids were sick or something. I don't know the whole story. But I was talking to the daytime supervisor about it. This guy's a staunch heathen, I guess. We don't really we don't talk much on doctrine and beliefs. but he was asking where this girl was, and I told him because she had called out before he showed up. I said, well, she I guess she had to take her kids to the doctor or something. They weren't feeling that well. I don't know what's going on. And then we just kind of started going back and forth. He and I did, the supervisor and me. And you know, I was just joking around because I like to push people's buttons a little bit and keep people on edge when I'm at work. And I was like, well, you know, how come she's the only one with a real job? Where's her husband at? And then, you know, I knew where he worked at. So, you know, he and I were joking about that some. And then I told him, the supervisor, that the guy works at ORU. and then the supervisor started laughing. He's like, oh, well, they probably don't believe in going to doctors then. And then he started laughing at his own joke, and I was trying to, you know, I gave it a courtesy chuckle, but I just tried to play it off and move on. And yeah, it was a big week for religious segues at work. I was on, oh crap, I guess it was just last Saturday, sometime last week. There's this other guy that started 5-6 months ago, and he works pretty hard, so he's part of the in crowd. We all like to have fun. And he was doing his thing over here, and then he found this tract, and it was making sense of natural disasters. And I still have it on my nightstand now, and just sat down to go through it yet. But, you know, I kind of skimmed it at work just real briefly, and it was, they had a good heart, whoever put that in place. I just wish Christians would stop throwing garbage around and acting like it's their religious duty to do that. So, he and I were joking about that, and then we got a couple other people involved. And, you know, that was my chance to throw in a couple jabs about how it's not even God. I was just kind of winging it. I don't remember what I said. But it was an opportunity that they brought up, so of course I wasn't going to let that one slide by without getting to inject a little bit of truth in there, even if I had to coat it with sarcasm. And then, man, this little guy, he just started to, we've been on a hiring binge at work, so we're going to start getting busy here soon. And this little guy transferred over from a different department. And, you know, I mean, he seemed outgoing enough and friendly and whatever. And then I just started hearing nothing but awful things about this guy from all kinds of people that aren't really much for gossips. And then one of my really, really good friends at work, I joke about I joke about being each other's soulmates because we're just so alike. and me and him and a couple of the guys were talking one morning, and just trying to, because I was trying to figure out why nobody liked this guy. I didn't really have a problem with him. He seemed a little too enthusiastic, but whatever. I guess that's a good problem to have. And then I found out this my real good friend at work was telling me that this new guy he was making fun of one of the long-standing employees that's, man, like he's everybody's friend, man. He's one of the nicest, most consistently friendly guys I have ever met. This new guy was making fun of him for going to church. And I got all up in arms about that and tried to be a little forgiving and gracious about it. And then my friend just kept telling me more and more about what was said. But man, one of the comments this guy said that I think sums up a lot of people's perspective is I don't know what he said to my buddy about going to church, but the comment he made after that was something along the lines of, well, I'm an atheist, so I guess I'm like one of the only rational thinkers around here. And man, that just pissed me off. And then, I was just trying to let it go, but I was still seething on that because the whole thing with Carrie's car was still getting to me, so everything else was just amplified, And then I went up to my buddy later, and because he and I were working together that day, and he got stuck going to Catholic boarding school, so you can imagine how anti-religious he is now. And it shows, man. He's got like a big 454 spark plug on his arm up here. It's really cool. It's awesome, but you can tell church ain't a focal point with him. If not by looking at him, then by having one back and forth conversation with him. You'll find out real quick. But, because he and I respect each other so much, I can get away with saying some stuff that he would just shut out for everybody else. So the day wore on, we were just starting to wind down, and I walk up to him and say, "Hey, you ever notice how most of these super intellectual atheists spend most of the time just worshiping themselves?" And then he just went off, man, my buddy did, talking about how stupid atheists must be and how they're so narrow-minded, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know he had this much in him. He's like, dude, yeah, go ahead and say you're agnostic. That's fine. I have a little more respect for that. At least you're being open-minded and not just, there's plenty of four-letter words strewn throughout his rant. But, man, from my perspective, I thought it was exciting to see how close he was to the truth. And then I got to thinking about it a little bit more. It's not like these people aren't looking for truth or aren't looking for something to fill that God void. They just aren't finding it in Christians. And how much does that hurt to admit? Especially when it's my friend that's saying it, man. One of the people that God has given me to be a steward of, to bring him to God. As if I didn't know I had enough work to do on myself. But, man, then usually on Tuesdays at work, I just like to just put my headphones on and just do my thing. You know, I mean, just go at it. Put on the harness and plow. So I was, but man, there was just something. Like it was the car thing, and just, I don't even know what else, but I was just ready to show how much improvement I needed in the love of people department. And so, you know, I was trying to listen to Johnny Cash and trying to listen to all these different musicians just calm me down, you know, a little bit of bluegrass or whatever. And nothing. And then finally, I started hitting a point. I was like, God, I need to hear something from you because I'm about to just snap. So I took a break and just went and sat down over where nobody really bothers me. Got something to drink and just started chilling. And I knew something was coming, man. I knew God had something. He was something on deck to give to me. So I just sat down. I was like, a lot of it was just a dynamic back and forth conversation. I didn't really transcribe much of it, but he kept talking about hope and how mine. You ever notice, man, once you start knowing, you hear from God, you can't really backtrack from that. And then he starts being honest with you about yourself. Man, God was like, hey, the biggest reason you've been so upset and frustrated and so irritable this week is, I don't know if you can hear the dogs, they're starting to play again. One of the biggest reasons you've been so edgy and irritable this week is because basically what you've been doing is achieving the results of, is reaping the fruits of the seeds that you've been sowing yourself, I think is how he said it. And then he went on to talk about how I've been blinding myself with short-term security. I mean, you know, there's things you just take for granted. Like when I lean back in this chair, I hope the back two legs aren't going to snap because we'll all find out pretty quick. But you know, stuff like that, you just assume that nobody's going to screw with your car. You assume a lot of things, and then when somebody does, then when somebody challenges those assumptions or the security you find in those assumptions, then you start finding out what exactly you've been investing yourself in. And I found out this week that I had not been investing myself properly. But what do you do but pick yourself up, man? Apologize, repent, because there's grace for stupidity, but that doesn't mean you ought to keep going down that road. Just, yeah, repent, apologize, and go from there. Try and catch yourself before you start making the same mistakes again. It's not about getting paranoid and like just putting plywood over all the windows in your car or something and then just assuming nobody's going to break into it. You know, and just don't be stupid. There's a balance. But my hope was really firmly established in God. Man, what's it matter if somebody busts out a window? What's it matter if a cow walks out in the middle of the road in the middle of the night when I can't even see it going right over a hill? What's the matter, man? Does that mean that God doesn't have our back? Does that mean God is just gonna, be like those insurance companies when you have too many claims, they just drop you? Ours has been good, thank God for that. But, I know it happens. No, man. God would love to find a reason to come through for us, to find an avenue to come through for us. And Carrie and I, man, another thing he said to me was it wasn't just my emotions and basically getting it rubbed in my face that I had been investing my hope in the wrong things, but that the devil sent something to tweak with the spiritual realm around me, I guess is how you'd say it. So that it would be that much harder to hear from God. It's kind of like, say you and a friend are having a nice chat at a coffee shop, and then these weird self-absorbed soccer moms come in, and they're talking real loud like this and laughing really annoying, and then it just starts, it gets harder to hear your friend because these tools showed up and just started getting in the way. Just like verbal pollution. And that was basically what the devil was wanting to achieve, was to interrupt that flow from God to me, so that my peace would get interrupted, so that I would just kind of get all out of whack and pissy and angry at everything that crossed paths with me. And it worked, sadly, for a while. Man, I felt so much better after God talked to me. I can't even tell you. He's the best therapist. But, and I suspected it was something like that because I talked to Carrie and she was feeling the same way, but she couldn't really pin it down either. Like we both acknowledged, hey, yeah, this sucks. We've got the money to fix it. We're going to do other stuff with it, but that's how life is. But man, I am still just angry. And she's a little more tactful about it than I am. I'm a little more brute force, full on than she is. But it was just not real pleasant. But as she and I were talking, God was talking to me about giving him some ownership in this problem. Well, I said that wrong. Let's backtrack there. Giving him some ownership in the resolution of the problem. And how that happens is we don't take it personal. Man, whoever it was that broke into Carrie's car, they ended up hitting 4, 5, 6 other cars right then in that same parking lot. And it's been an epidemic across the whole area, apparently. Like all the parking lots of where she works. And, it's hard to take it personal because somebody violated our property. But at the same time, if it's our property and not God's, what kind of stewards are we? If somebody messes with God's property, isn't it God's responsibility to, wouldn't God want to have a hand in making things proper, in restoring things? Let's say it that way. Yeah, he would. But our hope was in like a mutual courtesy and respect among mankind. We see where that got us. One of the I knew I was wanting to talk about hope today, and I had a different title for like the last 3 days. And then in my little conversation with God, my little therapy session with him this morning, he was the very last thing he said to me, man. He was just dumping all this stuff on me. he made sure that I knew that my hope was not where it should be. It was just, off in Timbuktu or wherever. And that was my fault. And that was the reason that I had been so easily frustrated. I thought the dog was going to come in. And he told me how to fix it. Last thing he said to me was, transplant your hope. We all know our hope should be in Jesus. It should be in the salvation that we have, in eternal life, in going to heaven. But how much of it really is? We can all talk a big game, but when the rubber meets the road, how bold are we compared to how big our heart is? After I talked to God this morning, I knew there wasn't going to be much as far as just single verses to pull out and use to reference all this stuff. But all the principles are biblical, man. I even tried looking for verses that I could just apply in here, but I would have forced them, and then I would have been out of context, and then I wouldn't have been any better than all these other preachers that just try and extort money from people. And I don't want to be one of those people. So I guess today is just one of those applying principles to reality kind of things, instead of talking a big game about the principles we should be having. So, honestly, one of the biggest things I was dealing with this week was just discouragement. Man, I've known for years that I wanted to get into ministry. And there's been a couple times where God really, really had a somber moment with me and showed me some of what that was going to entail for me personally. And it was not the most beautiful thing. It would not have been my best life now in the present. I promise. But, man, if God's with me, what's the problem? And, it was just, people are going to be getting more and more and more and more selfish and self-absorbed. And it's going to be whatever it takes for them to feel satisfied, for them to attain happiness, whether it's at our expense or what. And here we are as Christians trying to keep some kind of level of accountability in humanity and their knowledge of God. There's going to be a lot of awful things directed at us. And honestly, I'm just trying to tell you the thoughts that I've been struggling with this last week, well, particularly this last week. It kind of comes and goes. I'm not trying to be some doom and gloom naysaying prophet or whatever. I'm just trying to just be real with you guys, because I would expect the same from you and from people that I listen to. I wouldn't expect anything less. But, that these people would just go break into cars and steal an iPod that's not even worth $5 or $10. Just looking for money, because God forbid they work for it, right? There's people like that just have no regard for other people. Just, whatever it takes for them to get their money to do whatever they want with. And then there's people like this little smug, rational thinking atheist that likes to look down on people that actually have some hope in something. It's not like there's a shortage of people like him. I think the thing that sucks the most about people like that is the church creates them. But those are the kind of people we have to get, that we need to reach out to, man. They're not out of God's reach, so what makes us think they're out of ours? It's just that we're going to be, we have to make sure that we know that God is our strength and our hope is in Him, and He will pay the restitution for anything that gets taken away from us. And that's the thing really that I've been struggling with, because I know that it's just going to start happening more and more and more and more and more. The only joy that we're going to find is in God. Man, sometimes you'll hear this from Sunday pulpits, and then these people that these preachers just take a big stand against these things that are wrong in America and all over the world and just in society, and it's sin and blah blah blah. You take a stand for it, and then the whole congregation is just hallelujah, and just you're shouting them on, just go ahead, preach it. And then they buckle when it comes time for them to stand up to it themselves, and they can't hide behind somebody else in proxy. The church can't keep being like that, man. And the church is us. So we need to learn who we are in God, just how much He loves us, and just how solid He's got our back when it comes to this kind of thing. Another thing he said to me this morning during our therapy session was, he's like, hey, the future of this planet, it ain't going to get any brighter. And that just started putting things in perspective for me. So, on that somber note, I hope I gave you guys a little something to think about. Maybe next week we can go back to having some verses and being real Christians, because real Christians read the Bible to each other and don't learn how to apply practical things within ourselves to the world. Anyway, I hope you guys know I love you. I love doing this, man. I love the accountability it brings, because it really helps keep me in line. And I have a lot of fun with it. So, till next week, love you guys.